Hi guys, welcome to the channel. By mid-century, we'll likely have self-driving cars, more widespread internet access, and semi-smart robots. With 2050 just a few decades away, major issues await the world. Science and technology need to start focusing on solutions to make the future better than the terrifying reality approaching. Well, in today's video, we are going to tell you some reasons why the world could be terrifying in 2050. Without further ado, let's begin. The number of people living in cities will likely triple. In 1950, just over 750 million people lived in urban areas. Today, that figure has ballooned to more than 4 billion, more than half the world's entire population, and the upward trend is set to continue. By mid-century, about 6.3 billion people will live in cities. Aside from overcrowding, the skyrocketing population will likely spur the faster spread of infectious diseases and viruses, from tuberculosis to the flu. Dwindling water supplies and inadequate sanitation will only compound the negative health effects. Compared to rural areas, cities consume about 3/4 of the world's energy and produce the same amount of global carbon emissions. Therefore, a rise in the urban population will also put pressure on energy demands and generate more pollution, potentially making the air toxic to breathe, similar to the situation in Beijing unfolding over the last decade. According to the World Health Organization, outside air pollution is estimated to have caused 3.7 million premature deaths worldwide in 2012. That will only increase as urban populations rise and pollution worsens. The air could be thick with pollution, worsening lung condition and respiratory diseases. By 2050, the number of deaths caused by air pollution, which includes tiny particles found in smoke and haze, ground-level ozone typically emitted by cars, and toxic components in household products and building materials, will soar, killing more than 6 million people every year, according to a recent report from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. Why? Because in addition to dirtier skies, warmer weather will speed up the chemical reactions that produce many pollutants. One of those toxins is ground-level ozone, a chemical that irritates the delicate tissues lining the lungs and causes coughing, feelings of burning, wheezing, and shortness of breath when inhaled. Ozone often worsens respiratory conditions like asthma and emphysema. In India, where the problem is especially bad, the OECD estimates that about 130 out of every 1 million people will die prematurely from exposure to ozone. More than half of the world's population may not have adequate access to water. Today, 1.1 billion people lack access to water, and 2.5 billion people, 36% of the world's population, live in regions of the world experiencing water stress. 20% of the world's GDP is produced in these areas as well. Already, water scarcity hounds 2.7 billion people, nearly 40% of the world's population, for at least 1 month every year, either because they don't have access to clean water or because they can't afford it, Water Footprint Network says. And 1 billion people, about 1 in 6 of the world's population, faces daily shortages, according to the foundation. By 2050, however, the number will likely increase. Nearly 2 billion people will live in countries, mostly in the Middle East and North Africa, with absolute water scarcity, according to the International Water Management Institution. And by 2050, MIT researchers say that 5 billion of the world's projected 9.7 billion people could live in water-stressed areas. Aside from a lack of drinking water, populations in these areas might not have the means to irrigate their fields, threatening food supply, or for other domestic, industrial, and environmental purposes. Currently, 1/3 of the world's rivers, groundwater for about 3 billion people, are going or gone, according to the World Preservation Foundation. With population growth and global warming, the situation will only worsen. The drying of lakes and rivers releases greenhouse gases, like carbon dioxide and methane, into the air, potentially exacerbating climate change. Because of the water cycle, the world also faces more droughts, potentially making wildfires at least twice as destructive by 2050. If you are enjoying the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more amazing videos just like this. The types of fish we eat could become extinct. Right now, 87% of the world's assessed fish stocks are classified as overexploited or fully exploited. If the world continues fishing at its current rate, all fish stocks could be extinct by 2050, according to a 2010 report from the environmental branch of the UN. To combat the problem, including the UN and European Commission have tried to impose catch limits on certain species. We have no idea what kind of damage the loss of fish species could cause the ecosystem around the globe, or how the change will affect humanity. About 3 billion people receive 1/5 of their protein consumption from fish, making it a more important source than beef. We even use a multitude of medicines made from marine species. And then there's the money. Between 10% and 12% of people around the world rely on fisheries and aquaculture for their livelihood, contributing to about $129 billion in global exports, about half of which comes from developing countries. All in all, the oceans produce around $3 trillion worth of goods every year. If we expect to stop the collapse, however, more than 20 million people employed in these industries need to leave and train for other work over the next 40 years. Millions could be without food. Every decade, a warmer planet will decrease the amount of food we're able to produce around the globe by 2%. In case that doesn't sound like a lot, it means that in the next 10 years, we'll lose 4,440,000 metric tons of food. 1 ton weighs a little over 2,200 pounds. First, crop pests and pathogens will spread to warmer, drier areas where they have been a problem before. The problem will be especially acute across Africa and South Asia, which also happens to be where much of the world's food is produced. Global yields of wheat, corn, and millet will drop. Researchers estimate they'll plummet nearly 10% by 2050. As the amount of food we're producing drops, the demand will rise. A rapidly expanding population will add to the demand, pushing it up by about 14% by mid-century. In this high-demand scenario, the price of rice and corn will double. The lack of proper nutrition will affect children acutely, severely stunning development. Malnutrition is expected to moderately stunt the growth of an additional 3.6 million children worldwide, and severely stunt the growth of another 3.9 million children across the globe, according to the WHO. The rainforest could face total annihilation. Each year, we lose a huge chunk of rainforest, the same place we get many of our life-saving drugs, to deforestation, most of which is caused by logging and farming. At this rate, between a third and nearly half of the rainforests will vanish by 2050, according to a report from the International Journal of Climatology. As the trees, animals, and habitat disappear, so too will the source of cancer-fighting drugs like Toxil, which was originally isolated from cowtail pine seeds. Superbugs could kill 10 million people each year. Right now, infections that no longer respond to the drugs we once used are killing 700,000 people a year. By 2050, that number is set to reach 10 million deaths each year. The problem of antibiotic-resistant bacteria has been exacerbated by the fact that doctors and pharmacists across the globe give them out freely, and farmers worldwide use them liberally on their crops and add them to animal feed, even when animals aren't sick. Because of this liberal use, antibiotics have become ever-present. Almost anywhere, they can be found floating in the water and buried in the soil. Unless the demand for antibiotics drops or the regulations on using them are tightened, we are set to live in a world where millions of people die from infections that can no longer be treated. Hurricanes could become more frequent and more severe. As bad as Hurricane Sandy was, it could be just a hint of the destruction to come. While our grandparents most likely lived through one storm of Sandy's scale, our grandchildren can expect to see at least 20 during their lifetime. While climate change is best known for lifting sea levels and raising temperatures, it will also make storms far more intense. As the Earth heats up, more water vapor, the fuel for storms, will enter the atmosphere. This combination could make hurricanes up to 300% more powerful by 2100, according to National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration (NOAA) modeling studies. As oceans get warmer and northern sea ice begins to melt, sea levels will rise too. which will increase the frequency of floods across the globe. So guys, let me know down in the comments section below what we can do to save our world. For more interesting content, give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more awesome content. Have a nice day, and I will see you in the next video.